I'd like to welcome everyone to Ransom Notes. Frank McKay here. So much more importantly, our host each and every week on radio and on podcast, the author of the book of the same name. She's absolutely wonderful. She's an educator. She educates me every week, and I think a lot of you who are listening, she does it in such a wonderful way. She's a wonderful Christian. She's a wonderful person. Welcoming her back to her native soil of, not native soil, but your home soil. Your home soil of Springfield, Illinois. You have a beautiful picture in the background of the golf course that you guys play on. And you're back from a wonderful trip, a very exciting trip. Kathryn Ransom, welcome.
It's so good to be here today. And I get to look at these ducks all the time that I'm talking. And so that's wonderful. It's just amazing how beautiful the world can be at certain times. And this shot that morning when we were playing golf early, and I looked back and the sunlight was just right and the shadows, and I couldn't help but postpone my golf shot, grab my phone and take a shot. And then the big challenge is for old people is, now how do I get that picture onto the screen? And so, but anyway, there it is. And so we will enjoy the ducks till I figure out how to get a new picture there. But we've had a great week and we had a great trip. I don't know if you felt sort of cut off from community and cut off from friends a bit during this year and 8 months or 6 months or whatever it is, and almost feeling not really lonely, but missing people and missing events. Have you had any feeling about that at all?
No question about it. I mean, cabin fever, they used to call it, right? You'd get claustrophobic almost. Yeah, it was a necessary situation, but yeah, I think a lot of people got that. In Japan, by the way, they appointed a minister of loneliness, officially, the government. Amazing.
You're kidding.
No, a minister of loneliness. And I think because there were so many tragic situations and people being so depressed in October of 2020 that the government took that initiative and they said, we are creating a minister of loneliness, and it still exists.
That is incredible, and that's probably would not be a bad idea to do in lots of places. And this isn't what I'd planned to talk about, but I know here at Concordia we have several levels of care. We're in an independent living section, but it goes way. And I know when I go back in and I find some of my friends and as I visit back in some of the different levels, loneliness, Frank, is a real problem, and that isn't just because of COVID-19. I think we forget how lonely people can get, because I think the Lord made us to need each other, to need community, to need family, to care about others. But the reason I was sort of bringing it up is that, I think I had been feeling like, oh my goodness, I don't have anything to attend, no parties, no events, and suddenly this weekend, the balloon went up and all of these kinds of things happened. We went to one of the most wonderful concerts Friday night in the cathedral. Christine Brewer, who is a professional opera singer who grew up in the area of Springfield, not right in Springfield, and had come back as a guest that Friday night for a free concert in the cathedral. She's 65 years old. Her voice filled that auditorium, and it's the cathedral is quite large, beautiful marble, wonderful looking building. It's just a building, but her voice made it so wonderful. And I thought, that's one of the first really professional music performances I've heard in a live that I've heard in a long time. And then I started looking at my week. Earlier that day on Friday, I had worked to help set up the garage sale for AAUW. 4 hours, I worked hard on that. Saturday, I helped, no, I didn't do anything on Saturday. What did I do? Saturday, I went to 2 parties. We had the accountant that we have had a party in their parking lot. So all of these customers came, and it was a nice casual thing. And then we went out to the broker I had. He had a party on the same night, only they took it to the zoo. Can you imagine having a party in the zoo? But again, it was outside, so
Yeah.
that made it good. And then yesterday, after church, and of course I went to church, I ran over to the Jewish temple, and a group that I belong to, Academy of Lifelong Learners, since I'm sort of lifelong and so forth, and it's a great group. We're having a fundraiser. It was called a chili supper. So I stood on my feet cleaning tables. They gave me one of the really skilled jobs. And so I got to scrub down the tables and mop them up. And it was just wonderful. Dashed home, took a 30-minute nap, and then we went to another party. And it was out at the Island Bay Yacht Club. And it was a way for us to celebrate the Symphony Guild's sort of first party that we've had in months and months and months. So I don't know, my heart is just thinking, wow, this is really great. I'm sort of glad to be back, but I wish it had been stretched out just a teensy weeny bit more. But it did say, because today I had to go to the doctor talking about heart, I had good news, Frank. I had the news that my blood pressure was 110/78. And they tell me that's very good for an old lady.
That's good for anybody. That's an excellent blood pressure. I love having that. I usually do, but it's medication that keeps me there. But that's a good blood pressure.
Well, and then so I'm thinking, maybe if all of these lovely events help to have really good blood pressure, maybe I need to get all of these kinds of things happening every day. So you had said offline, well, probably your life isn't as hectic as some. I just thought I'd let you sort of share that the Lord has been so good, and he lets me get involved in so many things, and it's wonderful. But no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it's hectic, but it's fun hectic, and it's enjoyable hectic, and you're giving back. And when you mention church or you mention the different organizations, that's a very good hectic. That's almost hectic by choice.
Well, and I'm really convinced, and I think we've shared this before, I'm really convinced that as you get older, unless you just want to become a rocking chair person, the way to keep out of just being in a rocking chair, and I told you I took a nap, and it was about 20 minutes, but is that to keep doing as much as you can at the highest level that you can, because that keeps your head going, that helps you be a better witness for whatever it is you believe in, whether it's a symphony, whether it's professional groups, whether it's working and doing and serving and celebrating the Lord, all of those things. And you do it so much more effectively if your eyes can still dance and you can still sort of smile and you can be active and go. So I'm glad the Lord gives me that kind of energy. And because it doesn't work out for others, you just have to figure out what way you can be a witness for the Lord. But fortunately, I still can do it in a reasonably active way, and that's good. But I think that we had our first trip in several months and got back about a week ago from 12 days going to some of the Southwest national parks in our country. I don't know, have you been to any of those, Frank? Bryce and the Grand Canyon and let me tell you what the others are. My brain is gone. Arches, Zion, Canyonlands, Mesa Verde. Have you been to any of those?
I've been to Zion. I've been to Bryce. And what was the first one? Oh, well, Grand Canyon, of course. I've been to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the other two, no. Mesa Verde, no. How was Mesa Verde?
Well, Mesa Verde, I remember as a child, and you could get right up on the ledge and go into the little houses that are built up there. And then I remember in midlife, we went and we sort of could walk along down on the ledge lower. Well, this time we went and we were clear across the canyon and had to sort of use binoculars or really stretch our eyes. So they've changed how you can see it, but it is wonderful. But I'll tell you, there's nothing more beautiful than Bryce in Zion, I just, the formations there are really, really great. And we really enjoyed that. We looked at, and I hope that you'll be able to show the pictures that we took of the various formations, because they go from this huge, huge red bank or bluff or hillside. And then as the ice and the freezes, the water freezes, and then it thaws and it freezes and it expands, and the rock and the sandstone, they start dissolving. And so you start forming various kinds of different statues, if you want to call them, whatever.
Yeah.
You get, and it sort of goes through stages. And so you have sort of cliffs, and then you have what they call fins. And those are where the sandstone, which is lighter weight, and as the freezing, it drops off more quickly, and or the rain goes over it. It's a series. I sort of, maybe my hands, in case we can't see the pictures, it's sort of all of these rock things, but they're sort of close together, and they call them fins, and they're relatively thin. I mean, now they're not thin like a paper napkin, but they're thin for rocks. And then as more erosion takes place, suddenly you have some single ones, and there may be a knob on the top that is just, you wonder how it balances, how it stays there. And occasionally it does fall off. And they call those hoodoos. So it's sort of it's a wonderful word, means bewitched. And so you go to Bryce and you go to Zion and you see lots of these hoodoos. And then you go to the Canyon National Park, and that's sort of the stage before they get to the hoodoos. And that's where you see these big arches, and you can look through the rocks, and it just makes it, you wander through them. And in some of the places you are really in a canyon, and the shadows, and there may be one opening up above that brings sunlight down into it. And here is this red and gold sun rays, and you may be walking through a very narrow area. It's a place to go and visit. If people haven't been there, Frank, it's great. And we're so lucky that years ago, the government started setting aside some national parks and preserve some of this. So your grandchildren can see some of it. Even, it's great for me to go back and see, but it's hard to preserve those things. And as much as I was sad that I couldn't get right up there on Mesa Verde and walk there, I know why I can't, because every time people walk on it, you wear off a little more of the rock, or you wear off a little more, or you put your hands on the stone, and then that helps destroy it. So of course it's necessary. I just think it was great that years ago, when I was 15 or 7, when my family went there the first time, I sort of remember that, but I'm glad we don't. So anyway, we had a great time. And I think that, me, I sort of like to make applications to this. And our life sort of starts out like this big cliff, this red stone. And then rough things in your life, sins that you do, health issues, they sort of come down your side, down your body, figuratively speaking, and they wash away part of you, and they get into you, and then it freezes, and your heart freezes, or your life changes, and you change. You're not the same person. I'm not the same person, not just because I got older, and just because I have gray hair and did not when I was a kid. The inside of me has changed, some for the good, some for the bad, because you have tragedies. But just like those hoodoos are still incredibly gorgeous. We as seniors, you as a middle-aged, can be just as beautiful and just as important for the Lord as that single hoodoo, Or maybe you're at the time that you're a Finn in your life and you're a Ceres, figuratively speaking,
Right.
But as life goes on, you get some of those edges of you rubbed off, some for good, some for bad. And it just reminds us, I loved what I saw, and I need to continue to be both happy with what I do and what I am and what the Lord has made me. But I also need to know that I've had some things knocked off of me, not just physical. I mean, not just a heart or something like that, but the real me. And yet here we are, and trying to witness for the Lord. He can do it. Isn't it just great?
Just wonderful. I mean, there's a lot more to a trip than just taking pictures and noticing things. It's you take a lot of that with you. They say that traveling, especially the way you just did it, is the one investment that you never could lose on. You always have it. You always have that memory. And when you do what you do, and I always say this, you could take an acorn and within minutes turn it into an oak tree. But for you, being a writer and being a radio show host and being a philosopher and all the things that you do, a trip like that is like a renewal almost, right? I mean, it gets you, I would imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine it renews you and I don't know, rejuvenates you or something. Did you get that feeling? And again, I know you're glad to be home.
Oh, sure. Well, yes, I think you can have a wonderful time on trip. And I think most everybody says, but it's always good to get home to your little bed in your own little place and you do that. But you certainly do memories. And I brought back probably on my phone roughly 1,000 pictures.
Wow.
And some of those I hope that we're able to get to you so that you can show them, because
we're seeing them now.
It's amazing what kind of pictures you can take with a little cell phone anymore. And I didn't take my regular camera. It's just incredible. We had we started in Durango, which is a natural starting spot, and had two wonderful things happen while we were there the 3 days. Durango has an incredible museum, and if you're ever in the area, Frank, you need to think about attending it. It's really a 2 parts. One part is a collection of old antique things from the West, primarily. There was an old fire engine. There was a Texaco truck that looked more like a pickup truck. There were heads of animals of all sorts that had been killed in that area. And I know some people don't like to kill animals, but anyway, they had a stuffed bear, all kinds of things that are related to the Durango area. And then the part that I really loved was the second part, was a train museum where they bring in the old steam engines and repair them. They've got a round table. They can bring them into their shop. They have all kinds of tools. They have trained people. One thing they're doing is they're converting these old steam engines into diesel because of the environmental effects that the steam going out is not particularly good for the environment. And that sort of makes it sad in a sense, because that's what the old trains were with the steam. But what they can do in this repair shop, they can take an old engine. They literally craft any broken part, any part that, because there's no place they can buy them anyway. And so there were these craftsmen that were in with torches and iron and doing whatever you do to make metal parts and restoring them. And the narrator we had been working in that area for, I think, 30 some years. So he really knew it. But it was just really great to begin to sort of drift back into what train life would have been in the mountains. And then the second day, we did the famous narrow gauge trip up from Durango to Silverton, and in this open air, well, all the cars were open air. And so as you're going through the woods and turning the curves And again, I hope you'll be able to see the curves, and the phone will just have to ring, and all of this. And you see, we had 2 engines on our train. One of them was an old-fashioned diesel, I mean, a steam engine, and the other was a diesel. So we had some of the smoke and the stuff coming back in our face, and we're hanging out the windows so that we can get a shot of the train as it goes around the curve. And I hope you can see some of those pictures. But it's a great way to, again, experience that section of our world, which is slightly different from the Bryce and Zion area with all the big peaks. It really is more valleys, a canyon that has more a water stream through it, and then lots of forested areas. But as we're riding along, as I should say, well, it looks like we're really busy today, so 2 phone calls. As we're riding along in this, we came to a place where there was a little old-fashioned station where, where during the old days when the train had to stop probably and get water to put in and fuel and whatever they had to do. And there was a waiting bench. And I took a second look at the waiting bench. And there on it was a skeleton.
Oh my God.
I suppose partially for Halloween, but I don't think so. I think they had just put this skeleton out, and I just had to chuckle, and I pointed it out to friends. And then I got back home, and I'm thinking about all this experience, and I'm going to do that. I'm thinking about all of this experience, and I'm thinking, oh, life is just like that. We have to sort of modernize. We have to keep moving, but still basically be a train that's carrying our life along. And we don't live like the people in the time of Jesus. We don't have to walk all the time. Part of the time we have cars. We don't have to be on donkeys. We may take donkeys for an exploring adventure, but we have wonderful cars, sort of like the train switched from coal-based diesel to diesel. And then life is like this. You go around a curve, and there is another beautiful thing in your life. And then the next corner may be rocks that are in your way, huge boulders. And then sometimes you come around that corner and life experiences dead bones, a skeleton. So I had to go to the scripture, and I had to think about dead bones. And can you think of a couple places where God took dead bones and did something with them?
The jaw of an ass. What was that? Who was that? Samson?
Well, that's true. I hadn't thought of that one.
Yeah.
You remember the old song, Ezekiel cried, "Dem bones, dem bones"?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Well, that was there were bones, and Ezekiel had, with the Lord's help, had to bring them back to life so that the Israelites could move forward. And then there are 2 stories in the New Testament where the widow lost her son, and the Lord came and called him forth, and the dead bones that had been in the grave for a while came back. The Lord was able to take the skeletons of 2 different times when he raised, in a sense, dead bones. So I'm figuring that the next time I take the Durango Littleton trip, I'll look over there, and that skeleton sitting on the bench won't be there, because probably somebody said, "Come forth," and they'll have walked away. You just never know. But have you ever done the Durango trip?
No, I never did. I never did Durango. I'm not even sure is it in Arizona or Texas? Where is Durango?
Colorado.
Oh, Colorado. Oh, wow.
Yeah, Colorado. Yeah. And it's pretty famous, lots and lots of people. And if anybody's going to that area, it's about a 3-hour trip. Then we were picked up by our bus at the other end, so we didn't do the round trip, and then went on. But it was fun. We had a great conductor that talked to us a bit about things, and our guide. It takes a teamwork to do something like that, just like it took a teamwork in the engine repair shop. Life is built on teamwork. you can't do your programs without me, and I can't do my program without you. It takes a team to
Yep.
do things. And so often people today want to be isolated. We want to just do my thing. I don't care about anybody else. Life really works better when we help each other. And I think there's lots and lots of examples of that. But anyway, Lazarus
Wonderful.
came forth and the widow's named son came forth. And so we took them bones, and they came again. And we used to sing that song when I was a little kid. I guess that was in the old days. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was wonderful. Well, I think I had a highlight on our trip though. Have you ever heard of the code talkers, the Navajo code talkers?
I've never heard them talk, but I know it has to do with World War II, right? It was
That's correct.
right. But
That's
I
correct.
don't know anything about them. But they're fascinating from from what I've never even seen like a documentary on them, but I know they exist.
Well, one night they brought in, we were having our banquet or our dinner near the end of the trip. And the host, the guide had invited one of the last 3 living Navajo code talkers. I had always thought that they were code breakers, and that they would take the language and translate it into something so that the Japanese couldn't read it. It happened in the Pacific theater during World War II. But they really, the Navajos have a apparently very unusual language that is not easily decoded. And when the American military was having so many of their messages that they were sending to be understood and decoded by the Japanese, and therefore they were having tragedies. One of the military leaders remembered or got thought about. Anyway, they invited a number of young men, Navajo men, who came and they were trained, and they made up, they could never write anything down, but they took words from the Navajo language and associated them with key words that the military needed to translate to the military people in various places, so they would know what dangers were coming or what they needed to do, whatever messages they need to have. And they would find, and they would think, and I'm not explaining it nearly as wonderfully as the gentleman we had. And this 90-year-old was so articulate. It was just incredible. Apparently he does it periodically, but he lives in the area. So they took these initial 10 or 20, I think they had 10 men that they did, and one dropped out right away. And they were put in a room after a minimum of military training, because they were just young men. And they began to talk about the kind of words that needed to be transmitted. And they tried to find Navajo words that would sort of be associated, that probably, that the normal Japanese would not know. And they made up a language, in a sense, that helped translate this. And then a number of others obviously were recruited as time went by. And right now there are only 3 of these wonderful Navajo code talkers, and never had anything been written down until many years later, because they were afraid if something was written down, then it would be passed on to the Japanese or anyone else trying to figure out what we were saying. It was just an incredible thing. And there are 3 of them left. The gentleman that spoke to us, I believe they said was 92, and there are 2 younger ones that are still around. And I don't know where they live or what they do, but it was so great that they could translate and do this. And I just think that, sometimes we need to be remembering that we need to be translating God's word to others. It doesn't have to be written down. We need to be trained to do this. We need to share God's word. whether if you're Jewish, you still need to share the Talmud, you need to share what you need to share. We all need to be code talkers. And so that's my challenge to the audience today. Learn how to share the word with somebody else, because it isn't a secret. We do need to know about it. It was a wonderful evening. And if the pictures come through, you'll see a picture of this. It was interesting.
Yeah, everyone's seeing it as we speak. What an experience to meet one of these men, and there's only 3 of them left. I don't even know what to compare that to. I mean,
I don't either.
If they went on What's My Line, no one would ever remember that old show, What's My Line?
Yes.
No one would ever figure out what they were. I mean, it's the Navajo code breakers.
Code talkers.
Talkers. I mean, it's unbelievable. What a niche in history these 3 men have, and it's when they go, they're not making any more of them. And we're never going to have that kind of situation again, because we have all kinds of technology. But this is really what a wonderful trip you had. I mean,
and he was a wonderful guy. It was interesting. They did have a Q&A, and his granddaughter had to bring him because he's not able to drive anymore. He was on a walker, but he really, I mean, he was trim and fit looking and all of that. But if somebody asked a question, she would get up from where she was seated and she'd go and talk right into his ear. So obviously he had a hearing problem, but then he could take the question and respond eloquently. So there was nothing wrong with the head other than the hearing. And it was real, but we had a good trip. But it's always good to be home. It's always good to talk to you.
Always great to talk to you, but what a wonderful trip you had. And I forget who it was. Was it William James? The rejuvenative nature of travel, and just that it renews us, and it encourages us. And like Dorothy said in the Wizard of Oz, right? There's no place like home. But we wouldn't know how wonderful home was if we didn't visit some other places.
That's right.
You
learn to appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, 5 of these parks. By the way, before I let you go, did you go down into the canyon, or were you looking from the top down?
Yeah, we were down. Some parks you're more down looking up, and other of the parks you're up looking down. We did not get to ride on the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon because there's not enough water. They didn't have enough snow, so there wasn't enough melting, and that was sort of sad because I'll just share. Years ago, a friend and I took a 10-day or paddled raft trip down the Colorado, and each night the people running the trip would pull over to the side of where just a rocky ledge was, and they'd build a fire, and we'd sleep on the ground. And then the next day we get back in our raft and we would go. So I've been on the water, and I've been from the Page all the way down to almost, way down till it sort of not runs out, but 10 days on it. So that was great. So I probably wasn't as unhappy as some that didn't get to ride on it at all. But it is sort of sad. We forget that there are some environmental conditions that appear to be causing some adjustments to our country, and one of them is the water supply for that whole dry area of the West. They're trying to encourage people to use less. Probably all of us waste water. I suspect I've wasted water in my life, but we need to be more careful, I suspect. Yeah,
just look, what a trip. I said it before, but I mean, what a trip. And what you just said there, I mean, that's part of the times, and it's interesting to travel when there's different types of. Obviously, we wish they had more water and they had more snow, and it would have been nice to go down. But the fact that you went there and couldn't take the trip down to Colorado, just basically it lets us know where we are in our moment in history and our moment in time, and unfortunately. maybe some of the environmental concerns that we have, and things are changing. Those men, those wonderful men who had a fascinating and unique job, 10 of them, right? I mean, 10 of them to start with, only 3 of them are left. And that's part of nature, and that's part of God's great plan to put people here for a moment. We're only here for a moment, Kathryn, when you think about it, we really are.
Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah, just wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. What a wonderful trip, but I'm glad you're back home safe, and Marianne's home safe, and now everybody's trying to call you. You've been gone for so long, so that's why you're having call after call. And you got a beautiful picture behind you. We could see it. We could see it, the ducks, and the beautiful picture you took there. Well, welcome home and welcome back. And to everyone, thank you very much for tuning in each and every week. And we encourage everyone to binge listen to Ransom Notes. Kathryn is not only the subject of a long radio series, but now the host of her own show, Ransom Notes. Very proud to be her co-host each and every week. And thank you for tuning into our monthly meeting, our Zoom version of Ransom Notes. Frank McKay signing off. We'll see you next time on Ransom Notes.